Carlos, are you there?
Hey, man, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry for, the long intro. As you guys know, on the Sabbath at Midnight, me and Dominic have spoken about how every time we do a podcast, we have these tech issues and we have brand new equipment, top of the line, apparently. And every time I do a podcast, everything breaks down. And Carlos is my witness. The devil is at work, in my opinion, guys. You guys might think I'm crazy, but it's just too much of a coincidence. Anyways, Carlos, go ahead and introduce yourself before we start the show so people can know who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll start from there with the story.
Well, my name's Carlos. I'm 24 years old now. I grew up here in the Valley, but I'm from Texas originally. Seen a couple different things in my life. This just happens to be one of them.
Okay, so, right to the point, and this is what I like. So, for the audience, this gentleman right here, I've known him for a couple years, but recently he has joined my gym at a more longer period where I got to know him more longer than in the past. Before, he just kind of popped in and out. Now he's been here every day for a few months now, so I got to know him a little better. He's one of my students, and he shared with me a story of he shared a story with me when he was an adolescent, and he had experience going through the system. And what I mean the system is all the things that the government does that pretty much that we talk about that kind of puts people in this mindset where they're weak and controlled and pretty much destroyed to be kind of in a zombie state of mind, I would say. It's really hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but you guys understand where I'm coming from as soon as you hear the story, because this happens a lot more often than people think. And what I'm talking about is people in the system, what I mean, halfway homes, mental asylums, or whatever you want to call them nowadays, jails, prisons.
Psychiatric hospital.
There you go, psychiatric hospitals. They put the hospital in there to make it sound like it's friendly. So, these kind of places, they talk about it like, oh, that was back in the past where the guards were dirty and, people were getting attacked, brutally, verbally, sexually abused, and all that used to happen a long time ago, not anymore. And those things happen today, and I think it happens more often than before, maybe in a different way. But this is why I have you on the show, because you shared with me a story that I personally, shocked me. First it hurt my stomach, and then when I heard the resolve, it shocked me in a good way, because I felt like as much as you hated the situation you were in, there's no way that you can't see the intervention that was there. I mean, what you did was like I'd rather die if you weren't there. So before, I don't want to, spill the details, but let's just get into the point. So Carlos, tell us why I have you on the show. That I brought you on here because you shared a story where something happened in your personal life. If you want to share those details, before how you got there, please go ahead if you're comfortable. But you were put in a psychiatric hospital for what you thought was 72 hours, but ended up turning into a nightmare. Please go ahead and share your story. You have the floor. Go ahead.
So basically, I was in a time in my life that was very dark. My mom was also in the time in her life that was very dark. It was just a bad time for the household that I was growing up in. And there was a particular night where I was trying to leave the house. My mom wouldn't have it. One thing led to another, and the cops ended up being called. And when the police showed up, knowing that it's a 17-year-old kid and, you shouldn't need to show force in the way they did, I opened the door to the police, and it was about 12 officers, about maybe 4 or 5 squad cars, and they showed up to look intimidating. They showed up to do some damage. They definitely weren't trying to alleviate any pressure in the situation. I found that being cornered by all these big individuals kind of put me on edge more than I already was after arguing with my mom. And, I did something that now in hindsight I know is not wise, but I started to essentially punch a tree. And then before I knew it, I was getting slammed on the ground. I was getting cuffed, and they put me in the back of the squad car. They let me know that I was going to be put on what's known as a 5150, which is otherwise known as a 72-hour mandatory hold because you are deemed a danger to yourself or others. And it started off by, me begging the officers for them to let me off, for them to just let me out of the cuffs and let me drive to my friends where I could spend the night or the week and kind of cool off. And it kind of turned into me spending the night at Desert Regional, which is a hospital here in the area. Okay. And the beginning of this whole situation.
So again, really quick. Why did you go to Desert Regional? I don't know if I missed that. Did you get injuries or what?
So Desert Regional was just the closest place, because when this whole situation went down, it was about 2 a.m, maybe 11 p.m. But in that time range, so they couldn't transfer me to the hospital that they initially wanted to transfer me to until the morning. Okay. So I got essentially strapped to a gurney, and wow. They wheeled me into a room and shut the lights off. And then maybe 30 minutes after the fact, I have another person added to my room, which was a fully naked grown man, maybe probably in his 30s, maybe 40s, who they had pulled off the side of the freeway because he was on, some sort of substance, and he was, butt naked, screaming for his mom, crying on the side of the freeway.
Lord have mercy.
It was maybe 3-4 hours.
How was that? He just came in so he was right next to it, or they had the curtain at least blocking him, or
nah, bro, no curtain. Jeez. They just had him strapped to the gurney in the same way that they had me strapped, and they had maybe 3, maybe 4 feet of space in between me and him. You know what I mean? Jeez. And for maybe 2 hours, bro, I was forced to listen to this man scream for his mom and cry at the top of his lungs, to the point where I was starting to feel violent towards him because I just wanted him to be quiet. Eventually, a nurse did hear the commotion and kind of popped her head in there and asked if I wanted to be, removed from the room, which I pleaded with her to do so. She took me out, and she released me from my restraints, actually. And she told me, she was like, oh, for someone who was brought in here for what you were brought in here for, you seem real calm. And I told her, I was upset then. I'm not now. I wish I could go home, but I know I can't, Yeah, and she let me use the restroom, gave me a little snack. Then when the morning came, they strapped me back up to the gurney, and they put me on an ambulance. Then the ambulance was supposed to transfer me to a facility. I think somewhere in Beaumont, maybe not as far, but I remember when I got there, the facility that they initially planned to take me to was full up. So the only place they were able to find a bed for me was all the way out in West Covina, to this place called Charter Oaks. Oh, wow. If you look up Aurora Charter Oaks, or whatever it is that the name is of this psychiatric hospital, you'll find there's a bunch of reviews and a bunch of people that have been there. Yeah, it's just a bunch of terrible reviews.
Bad reviews. Yeah.
Bad things that happen there, man. Bad things that happen there. At first glance, the facility looks to have money. It looks to be well maintained and regulated, but that's kind of from the front. Once you get in, you really start seeing how things are.
So really quick, just slow down a little bit, Yeah. So as you're getting in there, this place, how did you feel? How old were you again, really quick?
I was 17.
So you're 17 years old. I'm going to assume you haven't been this far away from home and have the thought in your head you're going to be gone for a while. So what I'm trying, because I've been in jail before a couple times, unfortunately, those are stories for another day, but I know the feeling of you're just man, my freedom's completely taken. You feel at least me personally, I felt naked as soon as they, took the clothes that I owned and they took all my stuff and they give you their clothes. You feel you don't feel like things are easy anymore. You feel you have to kind of put your past away behind you, because you have a lot of other things to worry about, all the things that come into your head. Am I going to be targeted? Am I going to be jumped? Am I going to be, some guy going to try to make me his girlfriend? All those things go through your head, all the movies you watch, all the bad stuff. And I don't care who you are, your first day in jail or this kind of situation, I don't care who you are. You do have a little bit of fear. At the very least, do not try to act hard. It's an intimidating situation. You're going into a cell. You're stripped of everything. Your freedoms are gone. And it sucks. So my question is, what was your feeling? Because I know how I felt. What was your feeling when you were first going in, how it looked on the outside, and then when you got on the inside? Tell me the process.
What made it especially what made it especially like kind of riveting or like surreal was the fact that it wasn't just the facet of like being institutionalized, but it was also the fact that the first 5 minutes of me being in there, I could see that there were some very unstable people
and
that
you
I
can
was
feel
locked
it.
in
You
there
can
with.
feel it. At least
Yeah,
me,
man.
I could feel it in my heart and in my body. Like this place is not good. Like there's a lot of bad things going on here.
You know, like for a place that is with the guise of rehabilitation, there's a lot of people that are in there that are just sedated to a point where they can't really hurt anybody. And every now and then the sedation wears off, and that person that they are kind of comes up out of the inside and up to the surface for a little bit. You know what I mean? And you get to really see the dark places of the human condition.
Wow. So walk me through what happened. You know, you're going through the gate, whatever, you see the place and tell me, you know, just start right there. Tell us the story from when you got processed to the end, please.
So I got there. They released the restraints and they let me off the ambulance. I kind of went in there and I filled in some paperwork. I got interviewed by a psychiatrist. I got interviewed by a psychologist. And after, they asked me to write my thoughts down on a piece of paper on how I felt about the whole situation. At this point of my supposed 72-hour hold, there had only been maybe not even 24 hours had gone by, I don't think. Maybe 12 hours, maybe 18 hours.
Wait, man. So really quick, I forgot to ask. At this point, when, because you told me, because we spoke about this before the podcast, obviously, and when, because at this point you assumed you're going to be there for 72 hours, right? When did you find that information out where you thought you're going to be there for 72 hours?
So I knew that I was supposed to be on hold for 72 hours right when I was arrested, because the officer that I was like begging to let me go, he basically told me like, no, at this point you have been placed on a 5150.
Wow.
Now what that is a mandatory 72-hour hold. I don't know where you're going to serve the 72 hours, but you have to be on a mandatory hold, like legally, for the next 3 days.
So, so now that you say that, how many hours have gone by? You said 24 hours when you got to the place already?
Maybe not, dude. Probably because I remember this happened around like 11, midnight, maybe 2 in the morning, like in that window. Okay. So by the time I got to the actual hospital that I was going to be at for the next foreseeable future, it was maybe noon of the next day. So you're thinking maybe 12 hours, maybe 14 hours have gone by. I haven't really eaten anything, but I'm not hungry either because of the situation. I'm just in shock.
Absolutely. I know what you're talking about. You got that. You're just worried about so many things that the last thing you're thinking about is food, at least. That's how I was.
Exactly.
So,
and then
at this point, though, in your head, you are just assuming, okay, this sucks, but, you know, I only have this much time left. Easy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I was kind of just trying to buy my time. And, you know, the first thing they do is they stick a needle in you. They get some blood. They do like a tox screen. They see what kind of drugs are in your system. Depending on the drugs that you pop positive for, they determine the cocktail of drugs that they're going to give you to sedate you, because most of the people that are in there are violent or aggressive. And I was, you know, labeled as one of those violent patients right from the start. They actually allowed me to keep my clothes as opposed to most other places, but I was forced to give up my belt and the shoelaces of my shoes.
For what, suicidal reasons, or is that like a common misconception?
Even though I wasn't, even though I wasn't necessarily one of the patients that had tried to kill themselves, they remove all those items because of anybody who is in there for trying to kill themselves.
Okay, so with that being said, you get in there, like what's the feel of the place when you're walking in? Is there people, you know, looking crazy? Like, these are the details that I want the listeners to have. Like, when you're walking in, you see people freaking out. Like, we want to hear, because you told me before this podcast, this is why I have you on. I want to hear those little stories of those other people that you ran into, those, you know, all those crazy stories. I mean, those things are crazy, and it builds everything up.
Right away, you know, once I got through that whole beginning process, I kind of got like thrown into like the public area where everybody just kind of sits. There's a TV. People are all like kind of sitting there gazing at the TV. There's another corner where people are just kind of like drawing on blank pages or trying to coloring books. There's a very few amount of people reading. And where I happened to sit down to read a book, there was a guy who I at first thought was talking to me. And then when I really paid attention to the things he was saying, I realized he was talking to himself. Then maybe 5 minutes into the whole thing, I have this like younger Mexican kid. I think maybe his name was Miguel. And Miguel basically told me that I was going to roll with him because I was brown, because I was Mexican, that we were going to take care of each other.
It's like a jail kind of
like
vibe,
jail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I did notice that the majority of the people that were in there, not that color matters, not that race matters, but that's how things tend to be in there. The majority of the people
it is what it is. Just tell your truth. You don't have to.
No.
You don't have to do all this, public whatever type of talk. This show is for straight up talk. It is what it is. A bunch of Mexicans in there. It is what it is.
Well, that's actually what I was getting at. Me and him were the only two Mexicans, man.
Oh,
the rest of the people in there were white, dude.
Oh, wow.
White, and there was like maybe 2 Asian people, but the rest were white, bro.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of like an outnumbered feeling. You know what I mean? You feel like everybody kind of. So, well, I mean, at least the people that are there mentally, the people that you can tell have been in and out of this kind of facility, they kind of size you up, for lack of better words. They're kind of looking at you like you're fresh meat or whatever, even if half the people there, aren't really what you would normally consider the threatening type. But I feel like maybe what's really threatening is the fact that they're in there because they're crazy, and I like to think that I'm not. And
it kind of puts to rest, to me, in my opinion, this whole white privilege card, because they didn't have enough privilege to get out of that thing. You know what I mean? And that place is horrible. Man. I've never been in one of those places, but I've heard stories, and I've been in jail, and some people have been in certain psychiatric hospitals that tell me it's worse than jail. And I'm like, what? Because jail's already horrible.
Pretty bad, man.
Jail's already horrible. So anyways, go ahead and continue your story.
So my first night there, I get my room, and I'm the only person there that has a room to themselves. It's a room in there with like a desk, 2 beds, and then there's a bathroom with a shower and a toilet. There's no door on the room, and there's no door to the toilet or to the shower. I was allowed to shower my first night. They gave me like a little shampoo bottle that was supposed to be enough shampoo to shower once, a little bar soap that was supposed to be enough for me to use on my body once, and they gave me a towel. The towel was real small though, so that I couldn't use it to hang myself. Then once I kind of woke up the next morning, everything kind of hit me. It settled in that I was going to be there for a while. And that lack of freedom that you were talking about, how I couldn't just, decide to walk outside if I couldn't sleep, or if the fact that I couldn't go turn on the TV because I couldn't sleep. You know what I mean?
That's the worst feeling to me.
What I want to do.
Yeah, that's the worst feeling. At least the first time I went in there.
After I kind of got over that, lunchtime came around. I ate something. I started to feel kind of like myself again, and they started hopping me up on more drugs. They kept giving me different pills that just kind of made me feel.
So slow down. Do you know the drugs that you were given, the names of them?
I don't actually. They swapped the medicine regimen that I was on.
That's horrible.
A total of like 12 times when I was there, because I was very honest, and I told them how the medicine they kept giving me was making me sick. It was making me nauseous. I felt very heavy. I mean, I've used recreational drugs in the past, such as Xanax, Percocets, and it was very similar to the feeling that you get on those pills when you abuse them, when you take too many. You know what I'm saying? And that was just the dose that they were giving me to try to sedate me.
Jesus, Lord have mercy. So, wow, that's great. This is why, man, I always thought this system was just built to try to break people, to make them into what when I say these people, I'm talking about these people who live in the shadows that run all the big corporations, to the food that we get, all the way down to the president. You know what I mean? And it blows my mind that the people that make it out and have normal lives like you are the ones that just are built different, in my opinion. I'm not bagging on anybody that came out bad. I mean, it's a horrible experience to be in those situations, but I really do feel like just the way the system is, like, everybody knows these things happen and nothing's really done about it. I mean, they could talk about it all day, but it's still happening. All the corruption in the jails and the mental hospitals. But go ahead, I digress.
it's funny because before it even got to that dark place where I'm heading, I seen all types of kind of just gruesome shit. Like one moment some guy's fine, the next he's just punching the table.
Wow.
Then one moment, you know, we're walking to the lunchroom because every Friday to try to make it kind of special, they would take us to like a special little cafeteria and give us slightly better food than the crap they would feed us. And you know, I remember particularly there was this one guy. He kind of fucked with everybody and he took advantage of the system and he like pushed buttons. He got everybody angry, made everybody want to retaliate. And then when he was about to get some justice or really get hurt, he would run to the nurses. He would take advantage of the system so that he would be protected. Well, that same kid, Miguel, that I kind of met in the beginning and told me that I was going to kind of have his back and he was going to have mine.
Yeah.
He took a toothbrush, which was the only thing that really I can think of that could have been made into a weapon. And he snapped it. He filed it down somehow. And when they had us out doing some kind of exercise, they were having us play with a ball, you know, soccer with no shoes. And this guy reaches for the toothbrush out of his waistline. He goes to stab this kid, and the nurse intervened. And the nurse caught maybe like 6-7 stab wounds all in the same area.
Oh my God.
Miguel, that was the end of that. You know, he went to
Wait a minute. So why would he want to stab this kid again? For the audience?
Well, this kid had been, you know, for lack of better words, picking on everybody. He, you know, we're doing jumping jacks, and, you know, I jumped to do a jumping jack, and before I can come down, he kicked the ball at my feet so that I would slip and fall. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
When we were on our way.
He'd do it. What else would he do to other people?
When we're on our way to the cafeteria, he's tripping kids that are in front of him or, like, stopping so that the kid behind him runs into him. He's fucking.
What an a-hole.
We had just gotten our meals, and he smacked the tray out of some kid's food. Like he smacked the tray out of some kid's hands, so his food went everywhere. You know, he just do. He's
just a menace. I get it, man. I get it. Wow, yeah. that would piss everybody off. I mean, it's a matter of time. And as much as people don't want to hear this, I mean, I don't feel bad for the kid, but I do feel bad for the kid. But who knows what happened to him, when he was younger for him to behave this way? I mean, this kid was obviously very severely abused. But so basically this kid was picking on everybody, messing with everybody. At any point, did he personally do anything to Miguel, who you're just about telling me about, stab him? Did he do anything to him before that stabbing?
He just kind of fucked with him on a daily basis, man. Like I remember.
Well, this is a Christian show. Try not to cuss, brother. Try not to cuss.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
He did things on a daily basis. Like I mean, I remember the day prior, he had been watching TV and he kept turning the TV off. The day before that, we were sitting there and for no reason at all, when it was real quiet, he grabbed a book and just threw it directly at him. You know what I mean? Like he would do things on a daily basis. And when he was going to get hurt, he would, and I mean quite literally run, because he was a big kid, so he would never really move fast. He would run to the nurse and hide behind them so that he couldn't get touched.
What a little bee, man. That would make everybody just fed up, man. That man, those situations are hard to put yourself in, because, I probably would have ended up snapping on him, but at the same time, it's like, it's just hard to put yourself in those situations. But so what happened to him? Do you know what happened? He got did he ever get?
That was so did he get? Kid.
So let's get back to the story. So he stabbed the nurse. Did he ever get to him? Did he get him too, or no?
No, dude. He stabbed the nurse, and like the nurse that intervened was a pretty big Asian fellow, and he just grabbed onto him while he was getting stabbed. He didn't let him go. Other nurses came and pulled Miguel off him. They got that guy to the hospital. I know he was okay. He didn't die or anything. Miguel went to jail, and that kid who should have got stabbed never got touched the entire time I was there, bro. He knew how to play the system just right enough so that he was always safe.
Wow, what a little man. Well, karma always catches up. I'm sure his day will come, or if it hasn't already. So,
yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
But after Miguel went to jail, things were kind of quiet, for the next 2-3 days. And then after that, this young boy named, I believe his name was Raul. He gets brought in, and I was the only person that had an extra bed in their room, so he got bunked up with me. He was 8 years old. He was in there for like trying to kill himself. You know what I mean?
Wait a minute. What's his name again? What's his name?
I believe his name was Raul. He was very, very timid, very scared of everything going on. And like I said, me and Miguel were the only two Mexicans there. And when he got carted off to jail,
so how old and how big was Raul? How old was he? Tall?
Raul was 8 years old, and he was a little stick man. He was like a little tiny guy, maybe 4'6". You know what I mean? For like a rough kind of estimate right there. He's a small kid, and you know, he kind of stuck to me just because, I don't know, I guess I felt familiar.
Yeah.
And I just remember feeling odd because this white guy.
Would you say, really quick, would you say he was the youngest and smallest person in there, in a place 100%. Full of 100% predators, right? I would say in some kind of.
100%. He was the smallest, youngest guy there, and everybody else, the youngest guy was Miguel before him, and Miguel was 14. So the youngest guy after that was probably 16.
Wow. And, you know, it just shocks me to even hear, why would anybody send an 8-year-old to a place like that? It is just, I don't care. It is disgusting. Like, of course things bad are going to happen. You're putting people in a place. I just can't explain it. It's like jail, but kind of even worse, because it's more laxed. Like, things can happen.
There's some twisted people in there, man.
Yeah, like things can happen easier. Anyways, so Raul's in there. He's 8 years old. He's a small guy, and you're about to say, you know, you were telling us about he always stuck to you. He's familiar. Could be a race thing, whatever. Right. And people out there who want to, like, you know, scoff at that. That's how it is. If you guys ever been in the system, and I really hope you know, I'm not saying like, oh, it's definitely not cool to be in this system, but if you have, it's an awful experience. But you also know that, unfortunately, whether you want to have politics or not, going in those places, you have to stick to your race. There's no ins and outs of that. It's how you survive. If you want to live, you have to join a team. So, exactly. As you were saying, he stuck to you, and some guy was making you feel uncomfortable. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, man, this guy, you know, from day one, actually, I'd noticed this guy. He had like these beady little eyes, like, you know, when you hear the word crazy eyes, or the term crazy eyes, like that man.
Yes.
You could see the instability in his eyes, man. I'm sorry. And he comes up to me when the nurse steps out of the room for a second. And in like the most twisted little voice, he was like, "Hey, man," he was like, "You want a Xan? I have one crushed up in my room." And I felt kind of disturbed by the offer, and I politely declined. And that was the end of that, or so I thought. And, you know, later in the evening,
so wait a minute, so really quick. So how long? Just make sure, if we're not there yet. I just want to know how long was Raul. How long has he been staying there up until this point, and up until the situation? I just make sure.
Oh, dude, this is his first day. This is his first night.
This all happens in the first day, and this experience about him inviting you to do drugs with him, was also the first day?
That was the first day, man. Like, so, I'm telling you, Raul got brought in, introduced to everybody, and they told him, "Oh, you know, make yourself at home, grab a coloring book, grab a book, sit wherever you want." And Raul grabbed a little book, and he sat right down, right next to me, you know what I mean? And he was like, "Hey," you know, I was like, "Hey." And then I started reading, he started reading, and I had like my arm on this little coffee table right next to me. And then this white guy comes over and he sits on the couch across the coffee table that I had my arm on. And that's when he offered me the Xan or whatever. And then, you know, it was business as usual for the rest of the day. We had like a group therapy. We had dinner around like 7. And that was it. You know, they sent us off to our rooms around like 8, maybe 8:30. I was allowed to shower. Raul was allowed to shower. Then they said lights out, and it was time to go to sleep, you know. The way, just to give you guys kind of like a rundown of the way the facility was, you had this big long hallway, and there was rooms facing each other all the way down the hallway. And at the end of the hallway, there's supposed to be a nurse 24 hours a day watching, making sure that nothing bad happens, making sure nobody goes from room to room, that nobody is in any danger. With that being said, maybe 30 minutes into the lights off, I haven't been able to sleep, but I haven't heard anything to this point. And then all of a sudden, I start to hear crying, and I hear like this sobbing, this uncontrollable sobbing. It almost feels like, and part of me, I hate to say it, but part of me had this like internal conflict, like very, very quickly, like, oh, I really don't want to deal with this little boy crying right now, but I'm going to turn around and see if I can ask him what's wrong, or maybe I can comfort him in a way so he stops crying and we can go to sleep. And when I turned around, I couldn't believe like what I was witnessing. I look over and I see the same gentleman that offered me a Xanax earlier in the day to try to sedate me, I'm sure, have Raul face down, like he has his head like secure on the bed against the pillow, and he's kind of like putting all his body weight on him, and he's pulling his pants down, and he was pulling his own pants down at the same time. And, I did the only thing that I could think to do, which was just absolutely tee off on this guy. I remember I hit him with 2 punches, and he probably went limp from those 2 punches, but I just grabbed him, I slammed him on the floor, and I just kept hitting him. Maybe it took the nurse 5 minutes, 4 minutes, but I can't really be certain how long it took the nurse to get into the room. And when the nurse finally made the way down the hall and saw the commotion, saw the beating, I was immediately restrained. I was thrown in solitary. I got sedated. I got a needle. I was made to feel like what I was doing was wrong. And after the situation, when he was picked up and taken to the hospital after the whole situation, and then he was taken to jail, they explained to me that they felt that I took things too far, that I, could have pulled him off him simply and gone to get a nurse. I didn't have to sit there and keep beating him, but my rebuttal was the time that it took you guys to realize that I was beating him was the time that he would have been forcing himself on that little boy if I hadn't been awake when I was. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And man, every time, this is like the third time I think you told the story to me now. And like right now, as you're saying it, my stomach and my heart just starts like feeling like the first day of school, or like, that awful feeling in your stomach. And, bless the Lord, I've never been in that situation, but just even imagining being in that situation is awful, because, when that happens to a guy on a guy, like usually the men are never the same again. Like it's really hard to come back from something like that. And this is what I was talking about in the whole intro about when I was saying that I don't want to ruin the surprise. This is the surprise, everybody, that there's no way you cannot tell me, or the audience is going to agree with me, that they are blessed that you were there. And there's no way that was an accident. This kid was about to get raped, molested, and God knows what would happen to him mentally and the rest of his life. You're looking at 2 different timelines here. Okay. You're looking at 2 different outcomes, because that is a huge impact trauma on someone's life. Like, you know what I mean? There's your first day of school. There's the first time your tooth falls out. And then there's you know what I mean? All these things you remember. And that's a bad one. That's the one that's going to put you on a different, path. And I really think that you were there for a reason, as much as bad as it all sounds and as messed up as it sounds. I really do think, that you were sent, like God, like literally put everything in a timeline and said, this is going to happen so this boy can be saved from hell. And I do believe that guy, if this is used against me in the future, God is my witness. I promise I'm not sorry that I'm saying this, that guy deserved the beating that he got. Disgusting. discussing. And the sad thing is, whatever he was doing to that, trying to do to that poor boy, it happened to him. That's where he learned it. And yeah, I feel sorry for him, but at the same time, I don't, because there's two options. There's people that have been through that, and the route isn't to go do it to other kids and pretty much, make another clone, which is a kid traumatized from that kind of molestation. The smart thing and the godly thing and the right thing to do is to overcome that trauma as hard as it is, and don't repeat
Not
it.
to go and put it on someone else.
Exactly. Yeah. So, wow. Go ahead, man. Go ahead and finish your story. So after that happened, so what's happening? So this guy, this guy's trying to get on top of him. You whip his butt right before he's about to do the most disgusting thing on this earth. You beat him up, and then the nurse gets you. Give us some details. Like, what happened? What was charges? What were your charges? Like, did you get extra time? Did he get in trouble? What? Go.
To backtrack a little bit, I was supposed to be there for 72 hours. At this point in the ordeal, it had already been 2 weeks. Now, the reason it went from 72 to 2 weeks was because I kept changing medication. Like I mentioned earlier, they just couldn't find a good way to sedate me, because the idea was that they would find a good medication so that when I exited the facility, I could continue to take the medication and no longer have an episode. After this situation where I had to intervene and I had to beat this guy, I got evaluated again, and my psychiatrist and my psychologist both told me that because of my episode, that my stay was going to be extended, and that they were going to basically increase the amount of medication that they had been giving me, and they were going to try different substances that worked more as a sedative than the ones before. So, even though
disgusting, absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, man. Even though I was already sick to my stomach from all these meds, and I, felt like what they were doing was wrong, I kind of got brought into this frame of mind where I realized the situation that I was in for what it was. I knew that I was deep in the system, and the only way that I was going to get out of that place was if I played into what the system wanted me to do. So I started taking my medicine every day. I started, adhering to the regimens. I started spouting bull in the group therapy, giving them what they wanted to hear, essentially. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, through that sedation that they were trying to put me through, I was able to still kind of, think like myself, but I couldn't feel like myself. So I would speak to my family. I would speak to my brother. I would speak to my mom. I would speak to my sisters. I would speak to a girlfriend that I had at the time. And no matter what they said to me, no matter what the conversation was about, I couldn't find the excitement. I couldn't find any joy. I couldn't get mad. I couldn't feel sad. I just felt like a hollow shell, And to be completely fair, I mean, it did work as a deterrent. I couldn't react. I couldn't get mad at anything. That same guy that had been pushing everybody's buttons, that almost got stabbed by Miguel, he kept trying to irritate me when I was on this medicine. And no matter what he did to me, he could not get a rise out of me. You know what I mean? Like, almost like internally, like I felt like a pushover all of a sudden, because it was so far out of the normal for me to be so unresponsive to everyday life when I'm typically not an emotional person, but I definitely, I can be intense at times. I feel intensely, whether it's joy, whether it's sadness, whatever it may be. And, I remember there was this guy that came in after they drugged me up like that. And this guy talked about how he had this hatred for his mom, and he would talk about how his mom would put cigarettes out on him when he was a kid. He would talk about how, all types of abuse that his mother put him through. And no matter what he said, he would sit there in tears sometimes trying to vent to me. And no matter what he said, because of this medicine, I couldn't empathize. I couldn't be there for him. I was hollow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, so you met that guy that, happened all that bad stuff with his mother. Did you get to know him? Did you hang out with him? I mean, what else happened after you met him? Because, I already know. I want to hear the story though. So what happened?
So that guy, he essentially was very unstable, and he took a liking to me for some reason. He kind of followed me around just the same way as Raul did. After the situation where I had to beat that guy, I kind of found like this respect amongst everybody that was there. Nobody really messed with me after the fact. Nobody messed with Raul, except for that kid, man. That fat guy that just kept slipping out of everybody's grasp, just kept evading, getting punished for being that kind of person, for pushing.
This is the bully kid. This is the one that almost got stabbed. Okay.
Yeah. He gets this.
Those
kid,
are the worst, man. Those are the worst, man.
He gets this kid to a point where, he tells me, he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I'm gonna mess him up for you. I was like, nah, man. You don't got to do that. Like, we're all trying to get out of here. We're all trying to get better. We're trying to, not extend our stay here. Let's not do things in a way where we're going to make things worse for ourselves here. And essentially that kid pushed that guy far enough to where he had an episode, I believe, on the day that I was being released. And I'm not sure that he got to him, because from what I remember, he never got touched for the entirety of my stay there. But he essentially tried to attack this guy, and he got pushed more into the system because he was trying to retaliate against something that, everybody wanted done. He was trying to stop, for lack of better words, the abuse that this kid was putting on the rest of us.
Yeah. That's so messed up, man, that, it's just insane that's why that's like the worst thing that I always fear too. Like, besides all the stuff I said, the first day you're in, you're worried about being stabbed. You're worried about dropping the soap, as they say, that's like something that's always on your mind. But another thing too, is that you also think that this place is horrible. And, you're in there with pretty much a bunch of people. I would say it's a good 70% of them are truly there and belong there. And the rest are like, they messed up and they're trying to get their life better. But, that place is just, it's awful. And when you're there, it's just a whole different world. And not only, like I said, are you worried about those things, but the worst thing is getting charged for stuff and your 1 month stay turning into a life sentence because you have to protect yourself. You have to do this, or they're making you do this, because if not, you got to do this. And all of a sudden, you keep getting extended, and that's a true thing. That's like a really real thing, that when people get there, their year stay turns into a 20-year stay or a 15-year stay. That's awful just to survive. It's pretty messed up, man. You do have to have connects, and you do have to get your respect, because it's not easy, man. You can't just walk up in there and survive on your own. That's for sure. That's 100%.
And sometimes you're put in situations in there where, your morals, your beliefs really come to the test. You know what I mean? In that situation, I knew at the end of the day that me acting and doing what I know was right was going to extend my stay there. I knew.
Yeah.
Before I laid a finger on that guy, I knew. I was like, you know what? Like, things just got way worse for me right now, but not as bad as they could be for this kid here.
Dude, you are an angel. That is a godsend. There's no other way. Like, dude, what could have happened to him is worse to me, in my opinion, than getting jumped, getting beat, getting your teeth knocked out in front of your wife. None of that, to me, in my opinion, is worse than what could have happened to that kid.
I agree.
Like, there's even being beat close to death is not as bad as that. That is like a whole different thing. It's like a spirit that destroys the man, and there's like this whole thing that I read about. It's called the strongman spirit. It's like an evil spirit that just keeps building as this evil spirit keeps taking, pretty much the man's essence, as they do this to, as this, what do they call this cycle of this sick act that, it's like an ancient thing since the beginning of time, as the devil does the opposite of of God. It's pretty simple when you think about it. You know, God is always looked at as light, devil's looked at as dark. God says man and woman, devil says, you know, the same gender. And on it goes. You know, it's just the opposite of everything. And this is just another thing that that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that's happened to some people in this world, to men and women. And, you know, you got to pray for these people. But anyways, after all that, what do you have, like, anything else to, like, what happened? Like, lead us out to the story. Like, let's get to the story where, if you had anything else that happened and when you got home and how long you were there and your mom and all that stuff.
Essentially, you know, I ponied up. I took my meds, and they released me. And the idea was that I was going to continue to take my medication. But that first night that I got home, I took the pill bottle and I threw it away. I met up with all my friends. I, you know, cleansed my body, allowed myself to detox. And I remember packing some things up that night that I got home, and I stayed at my friend's for maybe 2 weeks. And then when I came home, I didn't stay for very long. I turned 18, like, very, very shortly after, maybe 3-4 months after this happened. And I moved out, man. That was kind of the end of me living at home with my mother. You know, after all this, and after a countless amount of things that me and my mom have been through, now in the present, we are better, and we have
Amen.
kind of rehabilitated our relationship. And I'm grateful for that. You know, I feel like at the end of the day, as much as I hate to admit it, and as much as I hate to say it, you know, I was probably put there for a reason. And I just leave it at that, you know, because it is a very dark place in my mind. And those
Absolutely.
are memories that I just try to kind of do away with and not really think about it all, man.
I understand, brother. But for you and for the audience to hear what I'm about to say, my rebuttal is that as much as that situation would suck, man, you get caught up, 72 hours turns into a month, 2 weeks, whatever. In my opinion, staying there for 1 hour is horrible. I hate those places. I mean, like I said, I've never been to one of those hospitals, but I have been to jail a few times, more times than I wanted to be. And time goes by extremely slow there. So as much as it's awful to be there, I encourage everybody to put yourself in that little boy's shoes. You are a little boy, but you're old enough to know what's good and what's bad. And you're like seconds away from probably the worst thing can ever happen to you as a man. Probably the worst thing, the most awful thing that can ever happen to you is about to happen to you, and you know it's going to happen. And you've already set in your mind that this is going to happen because you're already, you know, in a position where you can't get out, and you're already accepting it, and your mind's probably going crazy. And then all of a sudden it doesn't happen because some guy just comes out of nowhere and beats the living daylights. I don't care what anybody says. If you were in that position, you would probably melt and just thank you, Lord, and Carlos, and the combination of the both for being there, because everybody can agree that you would probably give a finger or a toe or a leg for this kind of savior. Am I right or am I right? Or am I right? Please. I mean, I would. Amazing that you were there. You cannot tell me that I'm not wrong. Come on, dude. That's crazy, dude. As much as you hate it, I'm going to say that I'm glad that you were there for that stay, because that's what happened. You made it out. And that kid I'm assuming, is a lot better than what he would have been. And
yeah,
that's all I'm going to say, because that kid was 8 years old. As you said, he was 8 years old. There's no way he belonged there. I don't care what he did. He's 8. Come on, man. You're going to put a kid in there? That kid did not belong in there. And he was being preyed on. He could not defend himself if his life depended on it. It was not going to happen. It was unfair. And you were there.
It's unfair.
And yeah, that's it. But yeah, man, thank you. Thank you for telling your story. If you have any closing things you want to say, please go ahead and say it now. So, is there anything else that you left out that you want to say?
Honestly, just,
whatever's on your mind.
Thankful for the way things have gone, and I just feel like everybody could do with a little bit more perception. Like sometimes things aren't what they seem, or sometimes things aren't the way that people would have you think they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you for sharing that story, because a lot of people are going to hear it, and I would like for them to hear it, just to hear the reality of certain things that happen in people's lives. I mean, things like this, change people's lives for the good and for the good and for the worse, unfortunately. And like I said, when you told me this story, man, I was like, you have to share this story, because this is some serious stuff, man. Anybody would give a lot to get saved in that situation. I am sure of it. And that's why I always tell people that, this goes even deep. I'm not going to go on a 10-minute tangent, which I could, but I'm going to go on a tangent really quick. This is why I always say that you got to choose your partner, right? You got to choose the right partner, and don't sleep around. And, the worst thing you can do is go sleep around. It's because as much as people that don't believe this, and the ones that do, you're ahead of the game, that sex is very spiritual, the act of sex, a man inside of a woman. And I can prove that by basically asking, a woman or a man. If I ask a man, what's worse, do you think, getting jumped and beat to death or close to death and living by 10 dudes, or would you rather get raped? Every guy's going to say that they would rather get beat up. And same thing for a woman. No woman would want that to them. They would rather get beat up. Most people, I would say 99.9% people would rather get beat up, because it changes you when that happens, whether it's a forced situation or you're choosing your partner, because it is spiritual. The act of sex is a very spiritual thing. That's why it makes people fall in love. It can, it does good and bad. Some people use it to control people in a bad way, and what it was for is for it's for two people, a man and a woman, to be together and share love. And if it's used in the wrong way, it really hurts people, and it fractures their mind and does bad things. So, this thing is all spiritual to me, and it goes back to basically what I'm trying to say is that everybody should really choose the right partner and choose the one that you want to be with for the rest of your life. And, you're not always, it's not always the perfect choice. Sometimes you have to go through a couple of things to find the right one, but you should, cause you're literally absorbing you're absorbing a part of that person that you connect with sexually. Every time you have sex with someone, you're both taking a piece of each other, a part of their personality. And this could be even proven in science with, I forgot I have it on one of the episodes with Vicky Joy, but it was talking about how every time a woman sleeps with a man and the man ejaculates inside the woman, no matter how long ago that man was, it's possible that, let's just say, the next partner she gets pregnant by, that child is going to take a tiny percent of that DNA from the man in the past, because that DNA gets stored in the woman's body forever. And it's been proven in animals 100%, and it's showing to be proven in humans as well. So it's a very deep thing, for another podcast for another day. But anyways, thank you, Carlos, for coming on the show and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And he's also one of my students, and he has a lot of good things coming up. And he's very young, and he's learning a lot. And things are going to go good for him. I really do believe this is a great story, and I really hope everybody respects the story and appreciates it, and enjoyed the show. So, Carlos, do not hang up. I'm gonna give my outros and keep you on standby. All right, buddy? So stay on board.